Celtic remain top of the Scottish Premiership tree this week, with James Forrest reminding us all that stories of his demise have been greatly exaggerated. 32-year-old Forrest is once again man of the moment, with his 2 goals against Dundee keeping us in top spot with just 4 games now remaining. We'll discuss Muff's favourite guy and much more in this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino. Tonight I'm joined by James, Paddy and Muff as we once again cover all things Celtic. Muff, the floor is yours. How's your James Forrest statue campaign coming along?
Coming along nicely, coming along nicely. I think, to be fair, there's probably a lot more people on board than there was, say, 3 weeks ago, but I just think what's been lost in the past maybe 2 years around James Forrest was when Ange arrived, he was just coming off the back of a really bad injury and he struggled to establish himself in a very successful team. I think everybody thinks because he's been playing for so long and been at the club for so long, he's older than what he is. He's not. He's still in what I would class as prime years, and used to be over 30 and you were regarded as a veteran. But whilst he's experienced, I think he's still got a few more seasons in him. He clearly keeps himself very fit, and when you sign new players, you always want them to be the next, Kyogo, Jota, whatever. That doesn't then necessarily diminish the ability that James Forrest has, and I think that's the thing that's been overlooked, is not only does James Forrest have significant ability and a lot of credit in the bank through his assists and his goals, but he has produced on the big stage for Celtic on numerous occasions. The wee asterisk next to that is his Ibrox performances have never been great, but at Hampden he stood up, League Cup finals, Scottish Cup finals, semi-finals, all those things. So I'm just delighted that he's back, and I think it's rather than looking at it as, that means that there's been failings in signings to identify players that are better than James Forrest. Maybe we just need to accept that James Forrest is a really good player. Yeah,
I'd say there's a lot to that. Paddy, where are you at? Has your opinions on James Forrest changed in recent weeks? Have you always been a fan? Where have you been at over the years?
I've always been a fan of him. I think I was kind of, going with what Ange was looking at over the last couple of seasons in terms of he's maybe just kind of not at the level that we were going to require. But I think Miff makes a good point in terms of the injury that he was coming back from. And I think he's actually suffered a few injuries in terms of comebacks as well. But he's still been really, really important, even to Ange as well, to have around the dressing room. He's someone he's mentioned playing a pivotal part. I just find it incredible this season that he's just seems to have popped up at the end. And with the looks of it, lads, like when we need him. And I think it's testament to him, but also I'd like to ask the question as to why now? Why not earlier on?
That and some other key questions, Paddy, we'll definitely get to.
I'm sure we'll get into that, Paddy.
You're spot on. James, what about you? Have you come full circling, James? I do remember you saying semi-recently James Forrest can't start for Celtic again, that needs to stop.
I remember that as well.
He started at the weekend and
you don't really remember, I'll repeat it right now.
He played a key role, so where are you at?
It's the same as it is. I think there's two things. Long term, and I mean immediate long term, starting next season, Jamesy, can't be a first team player. That's just the way football goes.
First team player or first team starter?
Starter.
But you can be in the squad?
Depend if others aren't going to step up and improve as they need to. And that's the core reason as to why he's there, is others haven't delivered. And even when they've delivered in flashes, they've then drifted out. Kuhn was very poor yesterday. Yang has shown what he can do and then decided not to show it. It's all in his head for Yang. So James is there, he's kept himself extremely fit. The fittest he's been at Celtic, I think. I was just looking at a couple of things today and there's pictures of him in the kind of Tony Stokes era. He's carrying a fair bit of timber.
A bit of puppy fat.
Puppy fat. But the way he's dedicated himself to keeping himself in form, I think there's maturity is one thing, there's one part of it. He's just thought, if I'm going to have any chance of getting in, I need to be fitter than everyone else on the pitch. And that doesn't mean speed, it just means stamina and ability to keep going. Before his goals yesterday, he had a couple of rangefinders and he's given us a different dimension that, for example, Palma fails at. He's getting inside but getting his shot away. I think Palma showed us again yesterday that he's more number 10 than a winger, but that's another story. So there's a crucial part for James to play 100%, and he was so crucial for the Scottish Cup final last year when the new Ange was going. It was himself, McGregor, that held the team together and got us over the line. So Jamesy, the man, huge fan. I just think ability, I think he's always played within himself. And by the way, Matt O'Reilly's starting to fall into that category as well.
Miff, just to pick up then on a couple of points James makes, and one specifically, if Marco Tilio, Yang, Luis Palma, Nicholas Kuhn, maybe one or two others, step up to the plate this season, do we even see James?
Possibly not, but the fact is that they haven't or can't. So, the demands of playing at a club like Celtic, you need to be some player to last 10 years. Because
14 years.
14 years, but I would say 10 years in where he was an actual, critical part of the squad. His first couple of years, he obviously came and went, and then there was obviously the season Dyla pretty much dropped him. I think he only played about 8 times or something like that in the kind of latter half of the season, because Dyla, he wasn't going to sign a new contract before Rodgers arrived. So there's been parts of his career that have been quite up and down. Rodgers arriving first time round brought clearly the best out in him, but I also think Patrick Roberts' presence helped massively with that, because I think it was the first time in his career where he was properly challenged to say, that there's 2 people vying for one spot, and whoever's at the top of their game gets it. That led to probably the best run of his career over 2 to 3 seasons, and he was one of the first names in the team sheet. It used to be there would be a moan when Forrest was in the team prior to Rodgers arriving. Now it wasn't even up for debate, and I just think over that period of time and the contributions that he's made, especially in games at Hampden, and you think to yourself, right, well, if we're bringing a player in, how quickly can they get to a level? Not everybody's got to be a Jota of that level of talent. Have we asked too much of some of these guys that have come in? I would say yes. I think they've been thrown into a pressurised situation where they've had to play. Yang, for example, Yang is 100% a project signing. So to bring him in and expect him to be delivering the goods in terms of double figure assists and goals in his first season is very unlikely. The other one that you've missed out there that we've lost is Liel Abada.
Of course.
That's massive. Considering Jota left in the summer and Abada, for the reasons that we all know, has had to leave the club. That's a lot of goals and assists you're taking out the team. So that's a lot of goals and assists you then need to make up from those wingers who are really inexperienced in the pressure cooker environment that is playing for a team that has to win every game. We demand it. We do a weekly podcast here where we demand it. It's just how it goes. Kuhn's played for Rapid Vienna. Palma played with at FC Aris in Greece. Those demands aren't the same. Palma's highlight reel looks fantastic. Cut in, hitting shots, dead ball delivery's brilliant. But doing that consistently, where there's always an end product, with 60,000 fans demanding it every time you touch the ball, it's difficult. And he's still relative as Palma, 24.
Think so, just
24. Again, I think Palma looks a wee bit fitter if he comes back. I have to say that. He seems to be trying to cover a wee bit more ground.
I thought he wasn't great yesterday, but he did work. He got himself about. He made a great block that led to a corner. He was pushing himself, albeit the abilities of the on the ball stuff's not great.
I still think, again, you need to give guys time to settle, and that's what James Forrest allows. He's a safe pair of hands that you can put in, who knows the course and distance, he knows what's required, and also, and I'll give the Aberdeen game, the semi-finals, a classic example. Every Celtic player on that park looked rushed until James Forrest came on, and it was just doing what you know you're good at, what you can contribute to the team, keep a hold of the ball, playing 1-2s, and like James says, James made an excellent point around the on-the-ball stuff for Palm was purely due to decision making. When he's coming in having his shot versus when he's using Greg Taylor on the outside versus when he's going for a run himself. Forrest got that down to a T. Very, very rarely loses the ball on that, and plus he always seems to have a really, really good habit of potting up with goals, and it's for that reason. So for me, safe pair of hands. It's on record, you know how much I think of him. He's a fantastic player, been a fantastic servant, but I still think he's got more to give.
I think so as well, and that's, again, it's similar to what James says. He's at times, James Forrest maybe just, I don't know, he's a reserved kind of character, he's a safe kind of character, and sometimes that's reflected in his play. Has he ever really taken the shackles off? And this is not downplaying what he's achieved at Celtic, but you do wonder if there was maybe some more there. Anyway, in terms of excuse me, his general fact files, I was looking up on Transfermarkt earlier on. Paddy, you mentioned his injury issues. If you look down, you can basically see a list of all James's appearances throughout his career. What is it, 491 of them? There's a lot of red there, which marks when he was unavailable through injury. He's had some tough injuries at different times, so it's even more remarkable that he's made nearly half a thousand. Is that a thing?
500 years.
As no,
definitely is. Nearly 500 appearances, despite some of the injuries over the years. So the fact file reads as follows. He made his debut, as I say, almost 14 years ago to the day. That was 1st of May 2010, a 4-0 win over Motherwell. James came off the bench and scored Celtic's third goal that day. 491 appearances, 108 goals as of yesterday, 102 assists. He's won 22 trophies for Celtic. That breaks down as 11 league trophies, 6 Scottish Cup, 5 League Cup, Within that, that's 4 trebles, and obviously apart from start to finish in the 9 in a row. He's got 38 Scotland caps and 5 goals. Maybe more to come. We'll get to that in a minute. But Paddy, to get back to the question you leaned towards, James Forrest was available for transfer in January. Yeah. There was strong rumours that he was going to go to Cardiff. Whether it was on loan or not, we're not sure, but there were strong suggestions that he would go down there alongside David Turnbull. He didn't play 1 minute of football for Celtic across the whole of January and the whole of February. So what is the explanation of him now being what is such a vital part of the team at the business end of the season?
The only thing I can possibly think on it is that he's went to Rodgers, went to the board and said, I'm not playing enough, and he still thought, I've got enough to give here. Is that a reaction from Rodgers that, right, okay, if that's the case, you're not going to be part of it, we'll part ways here at the end of this window if we can make a deal. He's been brought back in because the other guys are clearly not doing it at the moment, and obviously I understand with Maeda being injured as well. He's I just think it's worked out really, really well for him, to the point that I'm thinking when that happened in January, it's coming down to him wanting to play football. Rodgers been stubborn, saying no, I'd rather just have you around. It's not going to work that way. I think he's absolutely right to possibly go and look for football elsewhere, but it's working out for us here. I see where you're coming from in terms of I don't think he's a starter, but I just generally think that he's just not been able to get going over the last 2 or 3 years, and injuries aside, I do think it has been from the performances of Jota, Lila Bada, that has really prevented him making a claim to have a jersey. Now for me, I'm looking at Maeda coming back in on the left hand side, and I'm actually thinking James Forrest out on the right, and I'm looking at the likes of Louis Palma and Nicholas Kuhn as your impact players for the last 30 minutes if needed. I think he brings so much calm, as Miff has said. I really, really do. I think he's going to really push us on, and I do think that he will have that experience in the bigger games. I watched the highlights today of a game 6 years ago, 5-0 against Rangers, where we won the league, and he was instrumental in that game as well. Mm-hmm. We have spoke about the games against Rangers being a hard one for him, especially at Ibrox, but there's no pressure on him, and that's the big thing for me. He looks relaxed, and I just think he's got to play.
I saw that in him when he took to the park yesterday. When he walked out the tunnel, he just seemed, listen, he's got all the experience. He's played nearly 1,000 times. but he walked on, he just looked in a very comfy place. He wasn't fazed by it, and there was no anxiety in his body language. I just thought he's nothing to lose. He's proven all he needs to prove at Celtic, and I think he's approaching things with quite a fresh mindset. Matt, there's a excuse me, there's a quote from Brendan Rodgers, and he's been speaking glowingly about him in recent times. There is a question, if you want to go deep on or hard on Brendan Rodgers here, you could question why he never played him, and Paddy makes the point that the other guys haven't stepped up, the other wingers, but that's one thing. The other thing is James remaining fit and in peak condition and ready to go, so credit to him. But Brendan Rodgers, speaking after the game yesterday, he said, I said to the players after that James is one of the fathers of the success here over the last decade. What he's given on and off the pitch is a real symbol of that. Humble and understated, but he has that immense quality. He's fantastic, and I'm really pleased for him. There seems to be a very genuine mutual respect there. What do you think of how Brendan Rodgers has approached this?
Humble and understated, just like his manager, So I would say that to be successful in life, you need luck. And Brendan Rodgers has got very, very lucky, because he's had someone in reserve who he's overlooked, who just so happens to be up to the job more than the players that have been signed. And I say signed for him, Kuhn aside, signed for him or who he's inherited. Now, I think there's a touch of the Ryan Christie's about this, where, if you remember, Rodgers started the book out saying it was only by him getting injured at Murrayfield that Christie ended up coming on, making an impact and then getting a place in the team. I think Christie was probably destined for Aberdeen before that. Obviously, Forrest was a player known to Rodgers, so it's slightly different context, but I think it's a similar thing where Rodgers has been happy to have Forrest in reserve until he didn't really have any other options. But like I say, how lucky are we? It is luck, but we're all benefiting from it. As Paddy says, it's working out brilliantly for us as a team. It's worked out brilliantly for Brendan Rodgers. It's worked out brilliantly for us as fans, because he's coming on and he's doing the business, and that's all we want. I feel a wee bit sorry for Kuhn in the sense that I think Kuhn has been excellent since he's come back from injury, but these situations mean that from time to time players are maybe go to feel it a bit and no produce their best. I will say this, I know the Dundee pitch has been spoken about quite a bit, but it looked a really difficult part to play football on yesterday, really difficult.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's very surprising that we weren't necessarily at our full flow and best, but I thought the start to the second half was just woeful, just absolutely woeful. But anyway, to go back to the point, we couldn't sort of underperforming yesterday. It really did mean that a lot of pressure was on Forrest because he was the one sort of creative outlet. And he stood up to it. What a goal! Our first goal was absolute belter.
Great finish.
The second.
The second's a cracking finish, just to keep it low.
There's a unique angle on his first goal. I don't know if it's actually the official one from Celtic, but it was doing the rounds. It's sweet as a nut. It's just the technique, and it almost kisses the post. It just flies in just into the side net, and it's a great strike.
How lucky's Kyogo to be getting an assist for that?
What a setup!
Good old fashioned shot. Bang.
James, I'll ask you a question. Paddy is pretty certain that James Forrest should be a starter from now to the end of the season. How big a part do you think he's got to play over these last 5 games? And Paddy was messaging last night suggesting that James can get back to being a 90-minute man. Do you see that?
No. And I don't see him on the right. I think the pace has gone for him on the right. I think we're benefiting from him at the moment is his intelligence and his game experience of stepping in. And on the left, he's able to do that. I think if you put him on the right, you're asking him to take guys on and get past guys, and that's gone for Jamesy these days. It's more the intelligence he can deploy on the left. So it's really a battle for himself and Maeda, I think, to get that start. And I think, you know, we're all clamouring for Maeda to get back, particularly for the Rangers game. So with all those things considered, no, he's on the bench.
I would say on that, on the right, he's played, like you say, he has played the majority of his career on the right. He's very clever in coming inside on the right as well, though, in my opinion, and he really brings in the midfield in that sense. So if you look at the short balls across the 18-yard box to the likes of Hatate, Matt O'Reilly, that would be something that would come into play. We scored quite a lot of goals via that with Stuart Armstrong coming up. And I think that one of the things that really, really annoyed me about Lennon, and I remember him talking about
Mr. Lennon.
No,
Siamese boy.
Lenny. I remember him speaking about the coaching of James Forrest in the early days. And he says it's not always about beating a man. When a guy like blistering pace like James Forrest, it was. And he actually, a lot of the time he was refraining to get to the byline. He used to love cutting in because he was instructed to do so. And he's comfortable at it. So I know what you're saying in terms of beating a guy, but then you've got Alistair Johnson then as your overlap. And I think that for me, we need to utilise it. I just think...
I think James Forrest's game has evolved.
Aye.
He no longer has to beat the man because he's got the intelligence and the experience. His first objective is to retain possession at all times, and that's what he's generally doing. He's not taking risks, and you could, clamour for a winger who will get to the byline at all costs and try and take on his man and sometimes be successful, sometimes not. James's game's changed, and I'd say James's game has matured, and he's more focused on retaining possession first and foremost, and if the opportunity then presents itself, he'll go and do something more creative.
Aye. I think it just, as I said earlier on, I just see a guy that he knows what his value is, and I think the pressure's off him. And probably, like you say, I totally agree. I think he has played within himself a lot of his career. Go and enjoy it now.
It shows.
Go and express yourself. Last big question before we move on from this section. I'll come to you first, Miff, as the cheerleader for the man.
The answer's yes.
Should he be called up to Steve Clarke's Euro squad?
I'm very biased, but I'm going to say yes. Well, I suppose that depends. It depends on who's available, and what I mean by that is I think Stuart Armstrong maybe struggling. There's a chat of him potentially missing out. So just what the guys were talking about there in terms of that intelligence coming off the wing, I think Armstrong's extremely good at that.
Yeah.
And provides a really decent goal threat. I think Forrest, if he was deemed to be fit and sharp enough, would offer a similar threat. So it would be a yes from me. But I suppose that would depend, because if the likes of Armstrong do get back and become fit, Clark's quite a loyal guy. I think he'll go back to the guys that have kind of got him there.
I think it was Michael Stewart that's been suggesting that James has got a bit of flexibility as to where he can play, and he could also slot in at right wing back if that's what Scotland were looking to do. Nathan Patterson's injured, Aaron Hickey's struggling. There's someone else that's come across. They're short in various areas actually.
McTominay
took a bad one at the weekend
as well.
Yeah, so
Jeez,
lots of issues. James Forrest hasn't played for Scotland since the last Euros. He came off the bench against the Czech Republic in our first game, which I think was the 14th of June 2021, the delayed 2020 Euros. So he's not played in 3 years, but Steve Clarke, you're right, Steve Clarke's loyal to his players, but he will absolutely know all he needs to know about James Forrest. You know, he'll know that he can trust him if required. What do you think of taking him, as much as for what he can offer on the pitch, but also the experience of what he brings?
That's the big thing that he's going to add to the squad there. I mean, what you've got to look at as well, since he last played for Scotland, as we've discussed at length here, what he can deliver has changed. So that's something Scotland need as well, a bit of someone to calm things down, put their foot in the ball. It's just about the traffic in front of them. I don't really know anyone who's screaming out and saying they've got, to me, they've got similar attributes to what Forrest has there in terms of calmness, maturity, experience in that attacking kind of role. So if there's squad space, you'd be much better to bring in Jamesy Forrest than bring up a youngster that is just starting to break through.
Yeah, so he was asked about it yesterday. He said he's not booked any holidays yet, so he's keeping all options open. Matthew, you'll be sad to hear we're moving on from James Forrest for now, but the full Dundee post-match reaction show, I done it with James and Brido yesterday. That's available wherever you get your podcasts or on the Celtic Exchange YouTube channel. Coming up this week on Friday, we'll have the countdown to kick-off ahead of Celtic v Hearts. That's matchday 35, and it's at Celtic Park on Saturday at 3 o'clock. And then on Saturday, shortly after the game, we'll have the final whistle show. As always, all of our shows are available wherever you get your podcasts. So whether you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or anywhere else, make sure you're following the Celtic Exchange podcast. That way you won't miss a single episode. Alternatively, if you prefer to watch your content on YouTube, then be sure to subscribe to the Celtic Exchange channel for the very same reasons. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll take a look at a huge question for Brendan Rodgers in the weeks ahead. Welcome back, folks. He wasn't alone in this, but captain Callum McGregor looked to be notably off the pace against Dundee at the weekend. Following his recent injury, he looks to be struggling at the moment. So, question for you, Paddy. Should Celtic revert to the midfield three of Iwata, O'Reilly and Hatate, at least for the Hearts game this coming weekend?
Yes, for the Hearts game. I still think Callum McGregor will start against Rangers. And I know that we had such a strong first half at Ibrox with that midfield three. But we can see he's still not anywhere near where he needs to be. I suggest he'll probably be bursting a gut to make sure that he is during training. I seen a good point online. I think it was Hooijdonk actually mentioned that he's got a lot of miles in those legs, and I think that it will at one point start to catch up with him. But Callum McGregor offers us so much in the middle of the park with leadership, experience. I just don't think we can write him off, especially this season. I think it's going to be really important to have our leaders on the park. I think if he's given we're talking about the part yesterday, we're talking about a midfield three being nowhere near it. I think we've got to give him the little benefit of the doubt of that as well. I've seen the footage of McCowan pulling away from him. Of course, it's concerning. That's a guy who's playing probably his highest at just now with the adrenaline this young guy's got. He's a very tidy footballer. I'm not worried about McGregor, guys. I'm not. I think, I said last week, should he come off the bench on Sunday and we give Iwata the first hour? I think we should have done that, personally. I still think we're building the fitness up, and I think we might see it against Hearts, but it's such a big game. And for me, Iwata is one of those confidence players.
Maybe so. I thought he'd done well when he came on. I'll come to you at the moment, James, in terms of your thoughts on Callum McGregor's performance at Dundee. So in terms of his recent minutes, and I did cover this on the post-match yesterday, we've obviously been building him up since his injury, but the return has looked like 26 minutes against Rangers, 20 minutes against St Mirren, 62 minutes at Hampden against Aberdeen, and also 62 minutes yesterday against Dundee. What do you think of the performance he put in? The clip that Paddy references is Luke McCowan, young guy, talented player, full of energy, but he gets wrong side of Callum McGregor kind of 2-3 times in the one passage of play, and McGregor's kind of, I don't know, coasting a wee bit at the time, it looks like. What do you think of his performance overall, and of course his importance to the team at this time?
His performance the last 2-3 games has been poor. There's no getting away from that, but it is a guy coming back from injury. I think we're going to be dictated to by the sports scientists on this. There's a wee bit of mention in the post-match yesterday, there's a wee bit of tail wagging dog that the sports scientists are dictating who gets to start and how many minutes they play, and that's not always necessarily the right way. It's happening with Rio Hatate, who was very poor yesterday, shouldn't have finished the game, but did because they wanted him to get those 90 minutes into his legs. So I think they're doing a wee bit of, if we can get through and win games whilst getting guys through their minutes, then that's the kind of double target. Very risky, in my opinion. But I think they will stick with it for McGregor. I think to want to throw him in against Rangers, which we obviously do, he's got to have had the minutes in a tough game like you would get against Hearts. So I think he'll get the 60 in Iwata for the half hour.
I think it's a huge call, Miff, for Brendan Rodgers to make, and I've got to be honest with you, I'm for Iwata just now, and I think I agree with Paddy. I don't think there's a huge concern over Callum McGregor and what he's still got to offer Celtic in general. But a guy, maybe a combination, he's out of sorts physically and he's off the boil form-wise, and that can happen to any player. It'll happen to the best players. What do you think though? Is it too risky to start an Iwata or a Bernardo or someone who's fresh and firing and good to go?
I don't think it's a risk, given that the midfield three we're referring started in a game at Ibrox, so the barometer for a pressure situation for a Celtic player is, would you trust them in that environment, I would say, and then you work your way back for that. So Iwata, I think, had a fairly decent game at Ibrox, but he's the thing most notable about Iwata is when we're in possession, he's always making an angle to receive the ball, and I think what he's developing in his game, which probably wasn't coming naturally to him, is being that number 6, that defensive midfielder and plugging the gaps. I think he's getting about the pitch a lot better. Before, I always thought he was a wee bit static and players were running off the back of him. He didn't really seem to have a lot of awareness to play in that position, whereas McGregor is like a wee ferret. He's just in there, kind of dodging about and breaking everything up. Because of that, because you're used to seeing that style from McGregor when he's in there, doing his thing, he's not doing that now. It's very noticeable. Hampden, he was miles off it, just very reactionary, not like him. And it was more of the same at Dens Park. Now, I think I did mention this last week, was it? Whenever it was last on.
As my holidays.
It's a heel injury, which is a very, it's a difficult.
Complex.
Is it kind of calf / Achilles? Is it
It's
that?
be the tendons down.
I'm going for heel.
Towards it, aye.
Right. Dr. Miff has
I'm
spoken.
going for heel. So when you just think, when you're kind of pressing off, going shut people down, sprints, all those types of stuff, that's going to be affected. So it makes sense that it's taking a while for him to get back up to full speed. But what we can't do is gently ease him back in, because the situation doesn't demand that. So if you get fit players available that are going to allow you to play at the tempo, and that's the key thing here, play at the tempo that suits us and not the opposition, you need to play the fit players.
I would disagree with you just in a little bit with Iwata though.
Would you, aye?
I would, aye.
Oh, aye.
So, we've been disagreeing quite a lot this season, Miff.
Aye.
Good.
We'll talk about it after.
James likes to disagree with me, I know.
No,
It's easy done.
I think you're right in saying that he makes an angle, but it seems to be for other midfielders and the two wing backs. What you see for Callum McGregor is dropping in between the two centre halves and taking the ball for there and bringing us out a lot quicker. He seems to be getting shut off too quickly, and I think that's a big issue for us coming out from the back. You're seeing the likes of Carter Vickers having to move the ball forward a bit more. Liam Scales, as we've seen yesterday, some of the passing was shocking from him. However, it's because that option isn't always there if that player's getting closed off. Now McGregor, as we're saying, is off the pace. Iwata, I've not seen any game where he's dropping back to try and take the ball from him, and that's what I would like to see him start to do a bit more.
I'd a wee chuckle at Scales. He's fizzed pass back to Joe Hart's knee.
On a fiery surface.
Aye.
Across the pitch.
Aye, I was like, oh, Scalesy boy! Stick out in the stand, we'll start again, son.
And then slicing it for a corner in the last 5 minutes.
Man, I was sitting like,
He clearly trusts his keeper. The guy's been capped 75 times for England.
Joe does like to get involved, to be
He
fair.
does.
He does.
Paddy, I'll stay with you for now. Callum McGregor, he missed 4 games through that injury. The first one was the 2-0 defeat by Hearts at Tynecastle. Controversial game, but you felt immediately that you missed his leadership in such a game and the way that game played out. We then won 3 in the bounce, scoring 10 goals against Livy, St Johnstone, and then Livy again. And as Miff's referenced there, the midfield that took a 2-0 lead into half-time at Ibrox was Iwata, O'Reilly and Hatate. Do you see it? So I think you're suggesting that he should start against Hearts?
I think he should, yeah.
But do you see an element of risk in it?
I do, because as I say, I think it's this team is most clinical when they're breaking through the lines. And I feel that, the goals that we've scored of late majority came through the middle. We've been very, very comfortable in the transition. but it comes from those players that are getting the ball from the back a lot quicker, and I just feel that sometimes Iwata is static in those moments.
Just as a subplot to this, he's no Big Benny. Big Benny, you had James,
Benny Bronco?
Yes, good friend of mine.
Near the listeners, by the way.
Friend of mine.
Good guy.
He's well soon enough. He's not having a Wata at all.
No.
Not at all.
I think Iwata's good.
I don't mind him.
he's
He says he's the worst ever player to wear a pair of orange boots.
I need to check back who's also worn them, but he does split opinion, Paddy. Do you feel that he doesn't take the ball off his back four often enough?
No, I think he's hiding.
Oh, I don't.
Do you know, some of you folks are using the word hiding quite a lot. I think it's quite
When did I say that?
it's quite a thing to levy at a footballer.
Just in those situations, watch it, please.
But
please.
to suggest that they're not showing up.
But
No,
I
it's
don't
not.
like the fact I was pointed at there.
No,
I've not used that word.
I'm speaking-
Look back in your recordings.
I'm speaking more along
Listen
the
back.
lines of, like what he does create angles for his, as I say, the two fullbacks that are coming up with the ball. He is looking to try and create a bit of space for Hatate or Riley in the middle of the park. But just when we seem to get goal kicks, or if Joe Hart's got the ball, the distribution goes straight to Carter Vickers or Liam Scales 90% of the time. And I just don't see him coming back for it. I don't see him drop for it at all. And that straight away
Do you
cuts off our three midfielders, and the ball goes out wide, and then we hope it goes in.
Do you think it's a lack of knowledge or experience in the role? Do you think it's something like that? Or?
Potentially. I do think he's a very tidy footballer. I do, but I just think that watch McGregor, and I look at a fit McGregor doing this right, because I still don't think he's there yet. And actually, yesterday I didn't see him doing it much as well. That is how we break down teams. Every team has caught on to us this season, and the fact that let their left side get the ball because they're not penetrating the same way that they normally do if Scales is on it, and then Greg Taylor receives it 5 seconds too late. They've closed the angle down by that point. In that occasion, then you're going to need your deep midfielder to take the ball, and then that's when Hatate and O'Reilly come into play. It's not happening quick enough. It's not happened all season when Iwata's been in
I
there.
think it's a good point.
I also think you can upgrade players when they're not playing regularly, but I thought on the basis of recent performances off the bench, I think Bernardo looks pretty sharp as well. You know, I think he's got a part to play in the running as well, because James had referenced earlier, I think O'Reilly, as he's been nominated today for Player of the Year, but I think he's dropped off a wee bit in the past few games.
Hugely well within himself.
Just on Bernardo, he's very much in and out. You would say he's unsettled in the team at the moment. You couldn't guarantee what part he's going to play, if any, in the running.
But sometimes he looks imperious, then other times you wouldn't know he's been on the park. It's just a really difficult one, and I'm putting that just down to, you speak about Iwata and experience, but he's, Iwata's a fair age comparative to Bernardo and the amount of first team minutes that Bernardo's played. So there's maybe a bit of investment in coaching and for some more experience with Bernardo that we could do there, and we could really have a player in our hands if we choose to go and exercise the option on him.
Maybe so. There was one last point I want to make on the McGregor situation. Someone posted on Twitter, I think it was, do we think he's been allowed to play with an injury or a niggle that other players might not be afforded the luxury of, given who he is and how important to the team? And I think that's maybe quite apparent.
Business end of the season, eh?
Yeah, captain.
And there's no doubt
Not just because he's captain, he's an influential captain.
Yeah,
so,
and we lack leaders. I've mentioned this before. You've got Carter Vickers, you've got Hart. To an extent, you've got Alistair Johnson and Greg Taylor. Less so guys like Matt O'Reilly and others. Callum McGregor's an absolute leader of this team. He is the leader. Everyone references it, whether it's Joe Hart in interviews or any other boys, the new signings, Kuhn. They all say Callum McGregor's the guy we look towards, and you can't discount the importance of that. So, final question, just in terms of this weekend, then, does he start for you?
He probably will, but he shouldn't.
In your opinion, he shouldn't? Yeah. Paddy?
Exact same as Smith.
He will and he should.
He will and he should.
I like it. I like it.
I'm with the boys here. I think Iwata should start, and we should prep Callum McGregor for the equally important. I suppose you've got to beat Hearts first, but huge game against Rangers on the 11th of May. Moving on from the midfield area, there's a lot going on in Celtic's wings, and we've covered that recently. Least of all dies Maeda, who somehow has ran off a hamstring injury. Just an incredible character. You might have heard Brendan Rodgers talking about Tim Williamson, the head of the medical team at Celtic, saying he's never seen anything like it in terms of this guy's powers of recovery.
Tell him when you saw Dyson at the presser on Friday.
bounding up the stairs two at a time. Genuinely, I'm like, you take it easy. Springing up the stairs.
Stretch before you got there.
Dyson, no.
Just a phenomenal athlete, amongst all else. Mav, how big a boost is it to the squad overall? And do you start him if he's fit on Saturday? If he's fully fit?
If he's fit, yes, I think you do. He's just so pivotal to how we play, and I think there'll be nobody happier than Greg Taylor. There'll be nobody happier than Greg Taylor that Maeda will be back. So it's just what he does. Another point that we've discussed, over the course of a season, you're obviously got to overlap on points and go back to them, but I don't think it can be said enough. I understand that he's frustrating, but the work that he does for the team and the impact he has for the team is phenomenal. So yeah, if he's fit, he starts for me. Yeah,
so the suggestion is there's going to be further testing in the early part of this week to see if the hamstring tendon that was bothering him has fully healed, but the suggestions are that it has. And if he has a solid week of training, James, I think he slots right back in.
Yeah, because it's as much as it keeps us up the pitch and it keeps them pegged back. That's the big thing. That's Tavernier, he knows all about that. So that's a big part of what our game has to be on Saturday against Hearts, is just taking it to them and keeping the tempo up. I appreciate I'm contradicting myself in terms of McGregor and Iwata. Iwata maybe does keep the tempo better, but Dyson in particular, he has to be there.
Yeah, a phenomenon. Paddy, we've spoken about the wingers that aren't doing it at this moment in time. Yang, £2 million for Yang, £3.5 million for Palma, £3 million for Nicholas Kuhn. They've all been incredibly inconsistent of recent. Some flashes, across the three of them at different times, but to be a good, proper Celtic player, you need to find that consistency. And right now, early part of their Celtic career, of course, they're not quite doing it. What part do they play in during the run-in? And as a side question, I've mentioned their values. That's a combined £8.5 million for three players.
Yeah.
Are we doing that wrong?
Yeah, but I think we are big time, and I agree with the fact that Yang is a project player. Louis Palma, I think we've taken a punt. I really do. I was waxing lyrical about him at the beginning of the season, thinking, is he going to take us to the next level? Very good technique. Seems comfortable at set pieces. But my God, his head has just went down this season, and we've got him for quite a bit. So I still think we need to put a bit of time and effort in with him and see what comes of it. But we need calm heads at the moment. I'm talking about dropping Nicholas Kuhn. It's not. I don't think he's been too bad. I think he's actually been. He has had a really good spell for us lately. But I do think he's the type of guy that could come on with 25, 30 minutes to go and really put teams on the back foot as well. And I think that could be his role for the remainder. And I would say the same for Palma as well. However, if Maeda's fit, he's probably going to be playing the 90 minutes. I do think these guys are going to be impact players for the remainder. I do.
If I'm fighting a lonelier and lonelier battle for Yang, I have somehow seen something in Yang. I think there's a player there, I really, really do. And the back chat or the comments, particularly when we're doing the live shows, there doesn't seem to be much support for me. I'll get the three of you to give us your opinion in a second, but it seems that, so my opinion was that he was finding his feet, and the John Beaton Hearts fiasco, Tynecastle fiasco, really knocked him out of stride. He then served a 2-game ban, and he has absolutely struggled to get back in. I'm not kidding on that he's not been poor in recent times, but I thought, and I need to go back and check the tapes now, but I thought I'd seen something in him. I really thought he was a player, but everyone seems to be going dead against him.
No, there's a player there. I think it's just that his showing at Hampden was so atrocious that it just beggared belief. You wouldn't have thought the lad had played football before, never mind played at a reasonable level. That said, I think there's enough there. I'm still, whatever he does this season's a bonus for me. I think it's all about next year with Young. If he comes back and shows the right attitude, I think he'll win around the first team. But if he's not going to be, I think we should send him out on loan somewhere in Scotland for 6 months, get him fully acclimatised and playing every week. I kind of thought that would have been the case with O as well, but he just seems to have completely disappeared. So for me, I've not lost faith that Yang could have an impact for Celtic.
Keep the faith, bro.
HH. So yeah, I don't really. We shouldn't really be relying on Yang. It's always been my impression that Yang wasn't the winger that we should have been relying on. It should have been the guys that were already there. Unfortunately, we've lost one of them. but alongside Palmer and then Kuhn. I would be with Paddy around Kuhn. I don't necessarily think Kuhn's been a disappointment. He just had a bad game on Sunday, but
pitch is a big part of that.
I think Kuhn overall's been a success in my opinion.
Just generally speaking, then, with Yang, Palmer, and Kuhn, do you believe all three could have a decent future at Celtic?
Potential. I think with Palmer, you need to remember these are guys that are coming from different leagues, different standards, with different expectations. Playing one good game in three would have been fine where they were before. You know, so mentally that's a big thing to get used to, as well as the amount of people you're playing in front of and that expectation constantly, and then turning up at, you know, the likes of Dens Park or Pittodrie at 12 o'clock on a Sunday going, these guys are steaming. And they're still shouting at me. They still want me to take this guy on. That's the way it is. You need to get used to it.
That's it. What about you two lads? What's your hopes in general for Yang, Palmer and Kuhn? High hopes, mixed hopes? Where are you at?
I'm 50-50 on all of them at the moment. I think I'm with
Lamar.
Good
Nice
tune.
reference.
Good tune.
Got your haircut.
Sick fade, bro.
I think we what Miff was saying in terms of Yang are out on loan. I think that's a must for me for next season. I do still think he's got a bit to learn. There's a naivety to his play, and it just comes from just playing the game, getting that experience, and I just don't think at a club like us you get that time.
Do you know what I think the most frustrating thing is, Paddy, about Yang? He beats players with such ease.
Aye, but then he almost wants to do it again.
Like, you've already beat him.
Aye.
It's fine.
Aye.
Go run away from him. Normally that's the winger's biggest problem, is actually beating somebody in the first place. It's hard to do that, and then you whip your cross and whatever. He seems to beat somebody and then have a complete brain freeze in what he's got to do now.
Yeah.
James, your own take on the three guys?
I think Palmer's going to struggle. I think it's mostly positional. I think he would fit in a team that plays with a 10 and we don't. There's talent there, there's something there, but I don't see him becoming a winger for us. You can see he's not lacking application. He's trying to track back, and that's a new thing. He's learning that. But with that comes erraticness, and with that comes red cards. You know, just some of his kind of tackling and stuff.
You've got him getting sent off?
Just some of his tackling's erratic, and if there's a winger's cute enough,
Got to put that in my notes on my phone just to see.
5 on that.
James has seen something on that.
So no, I think he's going to struggle for a lot of reasons with us. Yang, I think there's a player there. I think the loan option that you're spot on. He needs to go and learn and maybe play out a slightly lower level and be the top guy kind of thing.
Be around, go and be Aberdeen's winger.
Aye.
That would be a good fit for him, for example. I've put out there often enough now. I've genuinely got high hopes for Yang and Palmer. I think the two of them are talented.
You've put out there quite a bit, you know.
We'll see what the response is.
Let me say,
after that.
Kuhn will be a player. No danger.
And your man Quan, how's he been doing?
Kieran Con, we'll get to Con in the next section, but he's taking a hamstring injury. He's coming back from his loan at St Mirren, and we'll cover some of that chat.
Back to where?
And I'm back to I don't know where.
Back home.
Very final question on the wide areas. If all wingers are fully fit, who starts for you? Left and right.
I would play Forrest in both.
and in goal.
Just straddling the pitch.
Yeah.
No, it would be Dyson and Jamesy.
Okay.
Same.
Dyson and Kuhn.
Dyson and Kuhn. I'm kind of undecided. I'll need to get back to you on that one. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll bring you the latest instalment of the Mystery Voice. Welcome back, folks. We're just about to do the Mystery Voice, but I'm under a bit of pressure here to name my two wingers, so I would definitely be going with Maeda. I think that's a given. And it is, at the moment, a kind of 50-50 between James Forrest and Kuhn, but you were going with Kuhn. I think Kuhn, but I do think Jamesy has a huge part to play. So there's my answer. Paddy, you set the Mystery Voice last week, and the answer was?
Like Pierre
Van Hooijdonk. Did you get it, Miff?
After a clue, but I'd guessed Andy Tom.
That was wrong. So Pierre Van Hooijdonk.
After working out that he was Dutch, by the way, that was the best.
So
what I can't say that.
Pierre signed for Celtic from NAC Breda in the Netherlands in January 95. 52 goals in 84 appearances, including the winner in the 1995 Scottish Cup final. Moved to Notts Forest after a fallout with Fergus McCann in 1997. Miff, your thoughts on Pierre?
Was it his debut at Hampden? He scored an absolute ripper against Hearts.
One each.
What a player, and signified part of that transition from also rans to contenders again. Winner in the cup final against Airdrie, and definitely raised the standard. Many magical moments and part of a phenomenal Celtic team to watch.
Yeah, some great stuff. The famed kind of trios, the three amigos, isn't it? It was him, Cadetti and Di Canio. But leaving those two aside, James, your own thoughts on Pierre?
A big fan, he just was. I never really thought about that. I think it's a great point, the transition from what we were to what we became under O'Neill, if you like, and that period in between. And Pierre, Cadet, Di Canio, that was all part of Celtic showing a bit of ambition at last.
And I think Andy Tom was the kind of first signing, kind of expensive foreign signing guy with a bit of track record, a bit of pedigree, and then Pierre, and then we moved on from there.
I think Pierre came in before Andy Tom did.
Was he?
Aye, I think Pierre came in, and then Andy Tom came in that summer. I'm sure that's just a guess.
If only we had the internet to check these things. Paddy, what about yourself? Your own thoughts on Pierre? Did you catch the Hampden season stuff?
I did, aye.
Yep.
That was my first season ticket.
Okay.
My first hero. I loved Andy Tom.
Wow.
Big Pierre. I loved him. He was just a great goal scorer, just very comfortable on the ball, and a real shame that I don't think we realised his free kick potential.
I know
until he left and went back to Feyenoord, and just a great player. Speaks very highly of the club as well. I think one of those guys that would have loved to have been part of that build a lot longer, but obviously wanted a bit more money as well. So money talks, unfortunately. But good memories of him, and that game against Airdrie, I'll never forget.
Definitely, we caught it amongst your clues last week. But he won a UEFA Cup with Feyenoord, didn't he?
He did,
and he then became part of what was a pretty talented, Holland squad at those times. Holland have been a bit up and down in recent years, haven't they? But at that time they were top drawer, and he was getting picked.
I think we only realised when he left just how good a player we had, because the player he went on to become, the pedigree that he obtained after he left us, because he was pretty much certainly unknown to us. I think was he a Davy Hay scouted signing, I believe. So at that time we were trying to kind of spread our wings a wee bit, but still box clever to compete with Rangers, and he was definitely one we got right.
Yeah, talented guy, and as Paddy says, he always speaks well of Celtic, so good luck to him. I think he's maybe an agent these days, doing that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't think he'll be coming. Okay, let's take a listen at this week's Mystery Voice.
Yeah, training every day, just trying to show the manager what I could do, obviously, and just good to get more minutes in the legs as well. Yeah,
what's a great performance today, well done.
Thank you very much.
GMS.
Aye, Gary Mackay-Steven.
Gary Mackay-Steven? No.
Sean Maloney.
So Dave here thought you would struggle with it. I thought you would get it, Paddy. My money was on you. I thought you might have got it. Maybe you can hear from what he says in terms of the clues. He's a young player that was trying to make it at the time. Let's hear it again.
Yeah, training every day, just trying to show the manager what I could do, obviously, and just good to get more minutes in the legs as well. Yeah.
What's a great performance today, well done.
Thank you very much.
Very polite.
Struggling.
Kai Stephen is that was what I thought it was, and the fact it's not been him's thrown me a wee bit. Definitely Sean Maloney.
No, I'll give you a clue. There was high hopes for him at Celtic, but it never worked out, and he's currently on loan in English League One.
Nice one.
The wee clue's got it, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? I wasn't sure he's got quite a mixed accent. So yep, you're spot on, Miff, but we'll beat that out for the listeners.
Actually sounds northern, like North Aberdeen type.
As always, we'll reveal the answer in next week's show. We'll also reshare the clip on the socials for anyone who wants to have a go there. To close out the show, Miff, you mentioned Kwon, and it has been announced that his loan spell at St Mirren is over due to a hamstring injury. But on that theme of loan signings or loanees, I want to take a wee look at some of the others who find themselves away from Celtic this time. Don't worry.
Come on, man.
It is not a Mikey Johnson theme.
just manufactured, isn't it?
Mikey obviously is part of that group. I don't really want to discuss him just now. We'll have the Mikey special at the end of the season.
I've got one I want to discuss.
Okay, so out with Kwon, you've got Haksabanovic down at Stoke, Mikey Johnson is at West Brom, Marco Tilio back at Melbourne, Bernabe not playing football at the moment. Is it in Brazil he's going to, Paddy? And Bosun Lawal, he's at Fleetwood Town, and he's the guy that's making a lot of headlines.
That's the one.
Not sure if you're having it, Paddy, because the Fleetwood Town found themselves, obviously Bruni's former club, in League One, and they've just been relegated there. But he seems to have been the one shining light for them. There's several clubs now vying for his signature. He's a second half. He's 20 years of age. He's a centre half who seems to have turned into a centre midfielder, a real powerhouse.
He was a midfielder that we turned into a centre half, and he's going back to midfield.
Got you. Anyway, he's getting a lot of headlines down there. 46 appearances. That's a lot for a loanee. Sometimes they go and they get some game time, some minutes. 46 games, an absolute mainstay. 6 goals, 2 assists. What do you want to say about him?
Well, he was who I had regarded as the most successful loanee. Probably Mikey Johnson aside, to be fair, Tino. Not playing at a great level, but Fleetwood as a club are an absolute basket case because the owner get some charges levied against them.
Mick Fleetwood?
I think that's him, the drummer. No, the owner who had taken Scott Brown down there and put a bit of money into the club, I think he get charged now. What he get charged with, I'm not sure, but it caused an absolute rumpus at the club.
Just say it.
And was part of the reason that Brown left. I think it really unsettled the club. But through all that, Bosun stayed and played fairly regularly. However, what I will say is he's not hitting penalties. Did you see the penalty missed?
No.
Absolute shocker. So it's obviously down to the coaching at Celtic as to how you hit a penalty.
Is Charlie Adam their manager?
Yes, Adam Charlie, yep.
Charlie Adam. It was Lee Johnson.
Stefan's brother.
Lee Johnson took the job after Hibs, didn't he? And lasted 11 games or something. Then that maybe indicates where they're at as a club.
It's a shambles.
They now find themselves in League Two.
League Dos in Spain.
Yeah, out with Bosun Lawwell. So he has made headlines. Is there anyone? And I genuinely don't mean to push it back to Mikey Johnson. Anyone there that you're keen to see come back and make an impact? Paddy Haksabanovic, talented guy, but doesn't look like it's happening. He's barely featured for Stoke actually.
Nah, no one's really like signaling out for me at all.
Hard to get excited about Tillio. We don't see enough of him. I think he picked up an injury as well.
He's not at a level, and I would actually say the same about Bosun Lawwell as well, guys.
Really? I've not seen much of anything. I've seen some highlights and some clips. But
I think it's what we need.
I think the change of positions is the key to me. I thought he looked nervy playing at centre half any time I seen him, even playing with the B team.
I never liked him at centre half.
I thought he looked really nervy. I think the change of position, and I agree with James. I think he would be worth a run of games in that sort of holding midfield role. Most certainly, because clearly when you're playing in any of those 3 English leagues, Championship, League 1, League 2, to be robust enough to
it's meaty,
produce that many appearances in a season when that's your first proper season, shows you that obviously he's a player that can be relied upon. Now, abilities one thing, but it goes back to the point, why are these guys in the Celtic system and getting shipped out on loan if they're then not going to come back, do the business out on loan for a struggling team and at least get a chance?
Yeah, and it kind of leads me to the next point. There's 2 different types of loans at a senior club. You've got the loanees that just can't get minutes, but they're well-established professionals, Haksabanovic, whoever else, and can't find game time at Celtic, so they need to just go and play football somewhere else to keep themselves ticking along. Then there's other loanees, and it's the academy guys like Bosun Lawwell. There's a whole raft of them here. I'll read them out. Ben Summers is at Dunfermline, Ben McPherson and Mackenzie Carse are both at Queen's Park. Matthew Anderson and Toby Oluwayemi, the goalkeeper, both at Admiral Wacker in Austria. And Josh Clark is getting game time for Brunei Air United, another goalkeeper as well. These are important learning curves for these guys. Bosun Lawwell will come back a better player, regardless if he makes it or not at Celtic. He's got 46 games there that you couldn't have replicated anything like that in the B team set up in the Lowland League. He's gone and at least given himself a fair crack at the whip in pre-season. Rodgers, I'm sure, would want to take a closer look at him in terms of what the pre-season programme looks like, and then it's back onto the player to impress. You've now got a new position that's been created at Celtic. You'll have seen the headline last week. Darren O'Day is now let me get the term right, the professional player pathway manager. His job, quite simply, is to bridge that gap between the academy and the first team for these various players. A couple of questions about that, James. I would say it's an important role, of course, because there's not enough young kids coming through. Are there any concerns that it seems to be Celtic going back to the well of an ex-player for that, given, though, the fact that Darren O'Day has come through the pathway, he's lived that, he's been an academy player, he's been a first team player? What do you think of the appointment in general?
There's 2 things going on just now. There's that, and there's also the under 18s post is up, and it's Charlie McGregor and someone else has been touted for
Johnny Hayes. Now,
I like Charlie McGregor the character, but Charlie McGregor's behaviour as a footballer does not suit how to develop young players, and
100%.
That's what happens if you behave like that as a footballer. Now, I want to see him, become a good coach and all that stuff, but it can't be in the youth. Too much nonsense. So that's just the payoff for the way he's behaved over the years.
What about, you could argue that Bruni's been full of nonsense over the years.
He's never cost managers his job though.
Aye, and chucked it during a game. Come on.
I've been told that wasn't the case.
So, well, that was one of many things, so the way he behaved under Dyla was just despicable for me,
I like Charlie McGregor. I think he's funny. He comes across as a cracking guy, but obviously we don't know what went on very telling that as soon as Rodgers came in, he was one of the first ones out the door.
Exactly. Do
I
you know?
think it tells you everything you need.
So, and that's a really crucial, appointment to be making, because that's when kids are making that.
On that
step from-
basis, you wouldn't think he would be appointed when Rodgers was at the club, surely.
He was up at Lennoxtown doing some stuff. So Rodgers hasn't got him as persona non grata.
And maybe there's a maturity. These guys reach the end of their
True.
playing days and realise, hold on a minute, there's
And
I
you
need
get
to
paid.
find a life after football.
No, but also, I acted like an absolute tadger. Don't be like me.
Is it maybe
Do you know what I mean?
Dana Day and Steve McManus are the ones that keep an eye on things like that, though? They've obviously just been about for a little bit longer now. Is it worth the risk?
But
the other side?
we open up a bigger question. I think we're too piecemeal on this. I think O'Day's fine for that role because he's gone through it. You know, he's gone through that whole journey from start to finish. So I think that's a really crucial role, but it's not a coaching role. The coaching roles themselves, we're just kind of like, are we really taking a step back and fixing this and making it deliver?
Yeah.
Or are we just going, we've no manager, we need a manager, he's a manager, get him in. We need to think about it, and all of the management at youth level needs to be looked at to see that we get better production in the pipeline.
I think it's more concerning a role for me in terms of, I know what you're talking about in terms of the under 18s manager. I think it's more concerning for me about the forward thinking in the club. For me, that signifies that we're probably not going to be looking for a director of football.
Yeah.
And we're now just thinking that we've got a manager, we've got a scouting network, and we've got someone that might say, he might make it in the first team. That's what it doesn't really sit well with me. I think I don't see many other clubs doing
The fact
it.
that it is a pathways role, at least the word pathways is in there. So there's, to create a structure that forms pathways from youth to first team.
What I'm going with is, like, we sat and listened to Don Mackay almost 3 years ago speak about world class in every department, and we sat and listened to Ange Postecoglou talking about the youth setups, all playing the same tactics, all coming through, all being given opportunities. Celtic have still not really spoke to us as supporters and let us know, is that in planning or is it in place? And with the sounds of something like that, not having an under 18s manager ready to come in straight away as soon as you announced Dana Day in that role speaks to me that still there is problems there.
Just to go back to Mulgrew, has he spoke? No, but has he been
It's just
Working.
paper talk about you.
anywhere?
No, I think maybe
Just
doing his
doing a lot of
badges.
punditry. He was on Sunday.
No,
doing
he's been doing the
stuff.
pundit stuff, but I mean, he's been working
He must be
anywhere,
doing his badges.
coaching youth teams.
He's
but-
definitely worked towards his badges. I've
Aye,
seen that.
That's why he was at Lennoxtown.
100%.
Part of the team.
Paddy, one of my questions on this subject was that are we as a group, or are you guys as a group, because I like to pass the buck and just put it on you, are you as happy with the appointment of another ex-player, or would you rather see, I think of what Queen's Park have done recently with some have worked out, some haven't, but some real fresh thinking. They've brought in some coaches from Ajax, I think, in the Netherlands and various others. Would you be keen for Celtic to fill these kind of roles with some external and some fresh thinking?
I think a bit of both is fine. I don't mind ex-players coming in and the guys have been there, they've played at that level, they know what that pressure...
They know the club.
They know
the city.
No, but I'm not going down that route. But you're speaking about players dealing with the pressure of playing in front of 60,000. These are guys that have done it and understand what it takes. So I think that there is definitely room for that. But again, I don't want it to be a bit of a friends act as well. I don't think that's the case.
It works fine with director of football.
Yeah.
It is dangerous without.
Aye.
I think that's a concern amongst the fan base when it was announced. No issues with Dana Day. I've met him in this very room. Actually, I was here when they done a podcast. He's a very decent guy. By all accounts, a pretty talented coach as well. But a lot of fans looking at that appointment are thinking, is that more jobs for the boys type stuff at Celtic?
With O'Day, I don't have that issue because I think he's came across very well
Quite
when he's
articulate,
spoken. He's done a bit of work in Celtic TV as well. He's been in and around the club for a while. In terms of O'Day, I don't necessarily have a particular problem. I think the guys in the youth team have probably been quite unfortunate just because of the way things have happened with the club over the past 4 to 5 years. You probably need a settled pathway in order to see that there's a production line there to continually go. Different managers coming and going, mooted talk of different structures means that it all seems to me a wee bit, who's making these decisions? Is it ultimately Rodgers that's making them? Is it actually the assistant coaches or the coaching staff that are making the calls on them, so that Rodgers is only worrying about the first team? Like Paddy says, we don't know any of that.
No,
we don't communicate.
We don't know any structure that's in there. And for somebody like Ben Summers, for example, Ben Summers was in and around the team under Ange. New manager comes in, he's away on loan.
He was in under Ange under necessity, I would say.
But it was, again, I'm talking about if you're a young player and you're in that environment, and then you go back out and loan, mentally, that it's maybe hard for you going.
If it's a plan loan like Lowell's was, then absolutely
How's
fine.
Ben Summers been doing that? I know he had a good start.
That's the whole thing.
He's in and out. I keep a wee eyes
there
in and out.
There should be a loan report from the club to say, this is how this is progressing or whatever.
I think there's certain things that a club can't reveal, behind the scenes and strategies and whatever else, and that's okay. But I think there are things that you can't, and you don't need to give us the warts and all, but you can give us a wee insight into what a player pathway is at Celtic. Once you break through in the B team, you'll then be you'll train regularly with the first team, and then you'll get that chance to progress. Certainly, you've got to make it clear to the players first and foremost, because if you're trying to attract the best young talent in Scotland, they need to know, am I going to go and sign at Celtic at 15, or am I going to go to sign for Motherwell or St Mirren, where I know that in 2 years' time I could be a first team player? Lennon Miller being a case in point. These kind of guys know that they'll get chances there. Or will Celtic sell them a vision that says, no, come to Celtic, by the time you're 17, if you're good enough and working hard enough, you'll be chapping the door, etc, etc. And you need lots of things to go right. You said a huge slice of luck is required enough, and you're right. But I think Celtic maybe should be a wee bit more upfront and clear about their vision in this area, because it's so important. And Darnodie's challenge, his task as of now, I suppose, is to make sure that Lawal has the best possible chance, that Ben Summers has the best possible chance at making it Celtic. And he ultimately, harsh as it may be, he absolutely should be judged on how many of his kids make the first team. That's what it comes down to. I'm kind of fed up of Celtic creating players for Ross County and St Mirren and various guys.
Tino's favourite.
It is an issue, because I think we don't create enough for ourselves.
There was a huge amount of ex-Celtic players in the Falkirk promotion winning team. Calvin Miller, Aidan Nisbet,
all these guys. Anyway, we'll move on from now. It's an interesting area. It's a great role for Darnodie to pick up, and we'll keep a close eye on guys like Bhoys and Lawal and see how it all plays out. Last wee bit of news, obviously, last week Paddy hosted the show excellently. Miff and Joe joined him as me and Jim were on our holidays. We went to Lisbon, went to the Estadio Nacional. We happened to be there on Monday, which was the 22nd of April, not by design, but it was Billy McNeil's 5th anniversary, so a very poignant time to be at the stadium. Would be a wee bit self-indulgent to ask myself how I enjoyed it, James, but what about you? What about you?
Did Tino enjoy? Hello, Tino. It's Tino. How did you enjoy your holidays?
Did I have a nice time? Yes, I did.
Yes, you can.
What about yourself?
It's fantastic. I mean, I'd been over in 2006, I think it was, the Gary Caldwell double OG game against Benfica.
Is that the one where he scudded his in the face with the ball?
Seen it live. Great. So a couple of days before that, myself and a pal went up to the ground, got in up in the steps and all that stuff, and then we're back in Lisbon the next day having a couple of beers, and somebody says Celtic are playing a bounce match at the ground, so we got to go up, and the cherry on top was the Lisbon Lions are coming as well, so you got to stand pitch side at Estadio Nacional, watch a training game, and then be on the pitch with Stevie Chalmers, the whole thing. It was fantastic. Up and down the tunnel, all sorts of things, so just fantastic. But it's very special. On Monday we were there with my mum and my dad, and it was just first time my dad had been there, and my mum actually, she'd been there before, so just up and around, up the steps, down into I'd never been in the change rooms before. That was a nice touch, and a great wee guy just showing us around. Just the place it's just a mecca. It really is. Anyone who hasn't been, get your holidays booked. It's about 90 quid return flights. Get there.
90 quid for the flights and €20 to Carlos to let you in. But
easy.
That's part of it. So I found myself there with Jan, my girlfriend. We were there kind of lockdown, March 2020. We were in Lisbon, took a trip to the city. Nobody around. The whole world was going mad at that time. We scaled a fence and got into the stadium, and I had the run of the place. Could walk across the park and up in the stands, which was pretty amazing at the time. But this time around, we've done it a wee bit more formally. And they're only too happy. I think they see Celtic fans every day as a general chat, and they're only too happy to take you in, take you up to where Billy get the trophy, take you down the tunnel, take you in the dressing rooms, pictures, videos aplenty. It's an amazing experience. It's really top drawer. I've had a lot of folks asking me about it since, how do you do it? Where do you go? Where's the access points? And I'm going to put an article out, so I'll put something on our website, a bit of a kind of how-to in terms of the logistics. I did put an article out about our experience, which was great, so that's on our website right now. And the other piece of content we'll put out is just a kind of video. Took some different videos there and narrated a few different pieces, so we'll put that out on our socials as well in the next week or so.
You should put out the Q&A with yourself as well.
You enjoying yourself here? Just a question for you lads, is it on your to-do list? So you'll have heard that the stadium's been redeveloped. I'm not sure the exact date, but I believe it's May of next year. They're putting a roof on the whole arena. It still hosts the Portuguese Cup final. Yeah. It's a very prominent stadium. Their final this year is Sporting Lisbon v Porto on the 26th of May, the day after our Scottish Cup final. And beyond that into next season, they're putting a new roof on the place, and it's a very unique stadium in that you've got the main stand, if you want to call it that, where Billy get the trophy. You've got your two stands behind the goals, and then there's a gap stand. There's nothing where there should be a stand facing the main one. It's really quite unique. By all accounts, they're going to fill that in. They're going to put a roof in the place. So yes, you'll still be able to go and see it in future years, but it'll be very different from how it was when the Lions picked up the trophy. Is it something you're keen to go and do, Paddy?
I've went myself.
Hold on a minute.
7 years ago. I was over. Just an incredible occasion just to take it in. Roasting hot day. I had to scale a fence, which, if you've seen me on YouTube, it'd be a bit of an effort, but I got there. Absolutely brilliant. The minute we scaled the fence, we seen the boy coming to open it to come and cut the grass. But no, just incredible, and what it means to Celtic fans is just, everyone should be going to see it.
Yeah.
It's an incredible place.
Matt, if you can't maybe take the boys out sometime, or
Aye, that's the chat. I'd love to take the boys out, so I think we obviously need to do it sooner rather than later. But I'd be very, very, very keen.
Yeah, phenomenal experience. So as I say, our article is there just now on the CelticExchange.com, and a few more bits of content to come in the next week or so. Paddy, I'll come to you for your final comments for the week.
Yeah, just I think what we were talking before, and it's a case of, just win at the moment. The football isn't too pretty. Don't expect it to be for the remainder of the season, to be honest. We're speaking about the little changes in the team that we might look at over the next couple of weeks, but the nerves are kicking in, and it's who's going to stand up during all of that and really stake a claim to go and win this league. I do think mentally Celtic do have that in them more than what Rangers do, but it's going to be a collective effort from every single player, and us as fans as well. We really need to get behind the team for this running, and I think if we can get these two games out the way and win them, obviously I know it doesn't do it mathematically, but we should be really proud of ourselves in terms of the character to come back this season as well. So yeah, excited. I think we'll win all games.
Hope so, really hope so, but totally agree. But massive push, collective effort you're required to get us over the line, and a massive couple of weeks ahead, James.
Yeah, it's business time. I mean, I seen a guy on Twitter last night saying, see all you weirdos that say this is a real title race and you're loving it. Just, I've no time for you wanting to win it by Halloween every year. Just canter it out for 6 months kind of thing. But it doesn't always go that way. And when you do win in a title race like this, the feeling, so this could be one of the sweetest titles we've ever won. 2 big games coming up. Win those 2 and you're almost there. So just dig in.
I referenced in the post-match yesterday that you were at Love Street 86. It's phenomenal time, fairy tale time for Celtic.
I'm 64.
And someone commented later on saying they had been there as well. An amazing experience, but this would be every bit as sweet. There is a feeling that just because the way this season has gone, the nature of it, and I suppose the season you're in will always be the best one. There's the recency bias thing going on, but there's a lot of buzz around. We've got a long way to go, Miff, but your own final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I've been on the right side and the wrong side of title races in my time, but it's been very strange the way that this season's unwound. Normally the team that goes behind around January, February, March time doesn't really have enough time to recover, so I think it's to Celtic's credit that they're now in the position that they're in. However, whilst there's tremendous credit there, you must finish the job. You have to finish the job. No one cares about performances, they just want the points. That's all that matters. Albeit that if you could be 3-0 up at half time in every game, that would be
nice,
fantastic.
absolutely
Fantastic. So nerve shredding, but we're in a position where we've been waiting on the team going in one of these runs where they win that block of 10. I think I'd referenced that back in February, March time, that the problem with this team was we didn't really have the belief that they could produce that block of 10. What a time to produce it if it was to be the final 10.
Block of 5.
No better time. Listen, long way to go, but huge opportunity over these next couple of weeks. But let's take it a game at a time and hope for a big win against Hearts on Saturday. So that wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James, Paddy and Miff for joining me, and thanks to you, as always, for tuning in. Don't forget to join us live on Friday for the Countdown to Kick-Off show ahead of Celtic v Hearts in the weekend's all-important league game. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for supporting the Celtic Exchange. We'll see you again soon.